Video game pricing used to feel simple. You bought a game once, usually for a standard box price, and that was it. Right? No mas. Now pricing, it's this full-blown strategy. Right? A game can be sold as a one-time purchase, given away for free, can be monetized through DLC, built around subscriptions, supported with cosmetics, launched in early access, bundled, discounted, or some kind of combination of all of those. And my point is that pricing is not just what number should I put on Steam. Pricing is really about how do players pay, when do they pay, and what are they actually paying for. So let's go through each model and break down pricing in gaming, starting with the classic one-time purchase. All right, one-time purchase. So this is gonna be the first pricing model I'm gonna go through. This is pretty straightforward. The way the model works, you have your price, right, down. So this is your price, this is your demand. We're gonna use this graph for each one of the ones I go through. And your price obviously represents the price of the game. Demand is basically how many people, and this could be thousands, hundreds, thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, whatever, right? Like, so it's all dependent, but we're gonna keep it a little bit more obscure. The idea of the one-time purchase model is pretty straightforward. It's that whatever you purchase or whatever you price your game at, so imagine it's priced at $40, then this is the amount of demand that you are going to be able to obtain, right? So it's going to be something along the lines of this, okay? Everything underneath the demand curve within this box is the amount of money, right, is what you're going to capture of your audience. So how much of the demand, right, of the people that you're going to capture, okay? If you were to, let's say, you know, move your price up to 50, okay, just for the sake of the conversation. You were to move this up to 50. Let's shift this sucker right around, okay? And here we are, we're at $50, okay? So $50, imagine it's $50, same idea. You are going to be able to capture all this under the demand curve, which means you're gonna have a bigger gap, right? So imagine this is, you know, this is all the people that you could have gotten if you had priced it at 0, and I'll talk about that, but this is all the people you're missing out on that would have played your game. These are the people you are capturing, and there's people up here that would have paid more. That's what this, you know, quadrant represents, is people that had a higher willingness to pay for your game, and so on and so forth. So this is what one-time purchase model is going to look like. And so you're going to use this anytime you're kind of factoring in, okay, what kind of game are we making? And so there's pros and cons to this, right? The way this model works is that, you know, player buys the game once. This is very common for very traditional story-driven indie games. This is a very traditional model, and it works best for games that, you know, it's a clear value proposition. Beat this campaign, one and done. Elden Ring. Examples could be, I don't know why Elden Ring's the only one could do. Mario, Zelda, Power World could actually not be in this, and we could talk about that, but there's tons of games that fit in this model. Is very common. So again, pros, it's simple, it's very player friendly, it's easy to understand. The cons, oftentimes, again, you have a high barrier to entry, $50, right? That cuts out a lot of people. It's harder to get people to try the game when you're at this level. Revenue depends really on that launch. You better hit it, right, when you launch, or if it's a bad launch, sometimes you struggle. That's not always true, but it's just the nature of the model. So that's one-time purchase, okay? Now you have DLC, which usually pairs with one-time purchase, right? This is DLC expansions. If you charge $60, right? So let's say you are going to charge $60. You are going to capture all this under the demand curve, okay? That's who you're going to charge. So imagine if you charge $60. Then when you do DLC, there's only possible to capture within that quadrant, because people outside the game that have never bought it aren't going to buy your DLC. So it has to be within this quadrant, okay? So we're gonna have anybody that can buy your DLC is gonna be a subset. Whatever you charge, it's gonna be something along these lines, okay? Pretty straightforward. You can kind of just play around. If you were to have this be, you know, $40, that means you could capture more people, which means maybe you still charge DLC for more, and there's positives and negatives to that. But it's like you could maybe catch more. So it just depends. It just depends on what you're wanting to do. So that's kind of a full price game, DLC model, what it looks like. Which brings us to what we call free to play. This is a really fascinating one. Free to play is interesting because the idea is it's called open demand. And in the pros of this, you basically can capture anybody that ever will play your game, whether they play it for 1 minute or they play it for 10,000 hours, right? Like, you will capture everybody under the demand curve. People that will never spend a dime, right? $0 to people you can capture up here all the way at the top that would spend lots of money. So price, it's called open demand because you can basically capture anybody under the demand curve. But this is just the model. You actually have to figure out how to monetize. And so there's goods and bads to the free to play, right? It's easy to get people in. Money's going to come through a different model, which we'll break down, but that's a negative. A positive is you can grow a large audience. This is why it's great for multiplayer games, social games that you're trying to get a lot of people on there that are interacting with each other. Again, the cons, though, it's super hard to execute. It oftentimes requires live service. It requires you to constantly be updating. So there's, not to mention, it can be exploitative, right? Like, it can be, I don't know. The way you execute, people will do negative things or do manipulative things when you have this model. So just goods and bads. And that's kind of what this looks like. So I broke this down. So how do you actually monetize a free-to-play game? And so this is microtransactions, cosmetics, and you could do this in theory if I were to take, like, let's say a full-price game. Let's imagine you have a full-price game that you charge here, right? So imagine there's a full-price game right here. And then you charge cosmetics on top of that. So that means you could only capture, in that scenario, this group of people, right? This group of people. You're gonna miss out on, let's say, this group of people, all these people. And so that's people that do a full price game. But right now I just want to focus on if you did free to play, meaning this is your barrier to entry, this dotted line. You can then capture people at all these different intervals with microtransactions or skins, or I don't know. There's so many models out there, you guys know. So there's all these different spots. And so this is how you could have cosmetics that are worth $1, cosmetics worth $5, $10, $30, $100, whatever. And this is where you get the whales. And this is something that I personally, morally, do not like, that you are making majority of your money off of just maxing out some specific individual. To each their own. But I'm not a big fan, so I'll be blunt on that. But I think having cosmetics in your game is totally fine. I think having microtransactions that are of value and allowing your game to be free to play, I think those are all great models. They really are awesome. They just have been manipulated and pushed gamers to a point that it's created a negative connotation. But this is kind of what that looks like. And so again, the pros allows you to capture people that are willing to spend $5 a game, allows you to capture people that actually want to put, thousands of dollars into a game. And so it's really good for that open demand model. And it really allows players, even over years, to continue to contribute. So there's value there. It can hurt a lot, as I talked about in its manipulation. So, which brings me to, so this is Battle Pass. This is subscription kind of model, and there's give and take. It's hard to illustrate with the graph because it's a repeating thing. And the value of that is that oftentimes a full game can be expensive, a one-time purchase, whereas subscription, you're kind of lowering the potential for somebody to come in and try it. They could try it for 1 month and pay $20. So you can actually capture more of the market. And in theory, you could capture it. It almost could climb up in theory, right? You could have $20, $20, $20, and it'll look more like that microtransaction graph. The idea is that you're $20, $20 every single month. And so in some ways it's more accessible for new players to try it, but it's also, like I said, you could be able to just monetize at all these different levels. So that's kind of how the subscription. So it's great because it's this recurring revenue. This is really valuable for a lot of companies. So you have a game like WoW, It makes a lot of sense. A game like Dota 2 makes a lot of sense. It gets players to come back. It's like I said, it's good live service. It can also feel really scummy in some ways. It can burn out and players, and more than anything, it burn out developers if there's constant updates. So again, just think about the pricing model and the negative and the positive implications. Which brings me to, I believe is my last one. Yep. This is like the bundles, additions, and discounts, right? I think what I wrote here was, I guess, deluxe, standard, sales price, like when you go to sell it. So this is just showing how some monetize, where it's like you have a deluxe, some kind of special that maybe 10% of your audience. Again, this is capturing more of that open demand, capturing these guys, their willingness to pay a little bit extra because they care a lot about the game. Then there's these guys, and they're, these are all the group of people that are willing to just pay the standard price. And you have these guys, which is all the people that are not willing to pay the standard price and are going to wait till the game goes on sale, right? And so it allows you to capture more of the market, right? Because if you were to just sell your game for a standard price, you're only capturing people in this quadrant, where by doing this, you're capturing kind of this group of people. And then also by selling it, you're capturing, here, let me get back out my drawer. You're capturing this group, right? So you're able to actually capture more players and have more profit by having a little bit more open demand. And so understanding how you price your game and the implications, right? It allows you to, again, think about all these pieces. So you really need to think about your pricing model as you're building your game, because again, if you're building a live service game, or if you're building a game that's multiplayer that you want to be able to support, maybe one-time purchase is not the best choice, because then what happens, in 2 years, if you're still doing live support, everyone purchased the game, your money went like this, and now your money's slowly going away because you're still supporting it. So you gotta understand all those pieces. So that's pricing in a nutshell. Hopefully this helps. Again, the final takeaway is just, when you are thinking about building your game and you guys decide on the type of game you're building, factor in the models that you're choosing, and it will help shape the business and allow you to be more successful. So best of luck.